On YouTube.
We are live.
Yep.
Thanks.
Is this in
Ann.
your office? These all in your office? I don't think so.
This is countywide.
What distinguishes them from 600 other people?
This is the last page of 32 pages.
Ugh.
Employees.
Dennis,
Get the rest of them.
Are you ready if we call this to order?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
First item is approval of our minutes of our last meeting. Pretty sure that came out by email. Yes?
Yep.
Thank you.
So move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Treasurer Swan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, additions, that carries.
So we just have a quorum, right?
Just have a quorum, yep.
Okay.
I do want to mention before the moment passes that Mr. Biddle's last meeting was last time, and it was quite a packed meeting, so we didn't take a moment to thank him for all of his efforts, but Michael Biddle from the ARCC was a great addition to the committee, and he is moving on, so we will miss him, and we thank him for his contributions to the ARPA committee.
Okay, he was a good member. Have we replaced him yet?
No, we didn't. I don't know if that's where we were going or not. I guess we need to.
It'd be nice to have
An
other non-elected
Yeah.
officials, maybe a representative of the community involved.
A public member.
You making insinuations about us, are you, Ethan?
I
I would say yes.
don't think I need to.
There was no doubt in my mind.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thanks. I think when we brought on Mr. Biddle, it was to represent the not-for-profits. So I don't know if maybe Mr. Lehman could help us just if the committee decided we wanted to go out and look for a community member that was strong in the not-for-profit world or could represent the needs and desires of not-for-profits. I know there's a Dovia group, Directors of Volunteers and Agencies. I think there's maybe something through the Red Cross too. I'm not sure. But maybe we could try to find someone that represented that category.
That's a good idea. I know, not to name names, but Kim Sopchak has been following a lot of our meetings, so she'd be able to get on board, but we'll make sure that we work with Don to try to get a replacement, and we'll have to send that through the full board. Okay, so we'll add that to the pending items. Yes, Wayne.
Just as a clarification, when we get to item 3, I'm going to recuse myself because I'd be a potential beneficiary.
Okay,
So I don't know what that does for a quorum because I think Ethan and I are both going to recuse ourselves. So
good point. Okay. Maybe we can think about that, Amanda, as our parliamentarian before we get there, if that ruins our quorum.
So if you were going to vote on that, you'd need all 7 of your votes in favor. It won't pass unless you have to have a majority of your quorum. So you need 7 votes in favor, which you wouldn't have unless you have more members join the vote.
Does that break our quorum though, if they recuse themselves and actually leave the room?
On there, is he on the committee?
members of the board, members of the committee, period.
So if you have 2 members that get up and leave the room, you no longer have a quorum. That's
Okay, okay.
No, just
Ben's not on our committee, Dennis.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
can we
Supervisor.
ask our county attorney what the best practice is then for recusal? I understand that's different than abstaining. So if that's the case from our attorney or our parliamentarian, if someone's recusing, if you should be, I apologize, if you should be removing yourself from the dialogue or the room, I've heard it both ways,
Right.
but that sounds like it might have an impact on our ability to move forward with any type of business.
Just on that item.
Yeah.
I don't have a legal answer on whether you need to physically leave or not, or if your recusal is enough if you don't speak and act. That's something I can look into going forward, but for today, I'm not going to have a quick answer. I think it's more of a probably a Robert's Rules question rather than a statutory legal question. I'm not sure that they would have, I'm not sure they have to leave the room off the top of my head.
Okay, but in any case, we wouldn't be able to take action, so maybe we, unless a couple people show up before then. Right. Let's go to the first discussion item, which is just on general application process update.
Hey, Ben,
Okay.
Dennis, don't leave the room.
Perfect.
Go ahead,
Is the chief
Ethan.
here?
So since the last time we met, we launched the application. Larry helped clarify some of the questions on the front end of it, just so it was, better for applicants and for us. So that's live. We've got a number of responses so far, a number of inquiries as well. As of yesterday, if you look on the fifth page of the agenda, you'll see a quick little infographic that Sarah Frankenfeld put together based on the online submissions to date.
Ethan,
Well,
is that something that's viewable to the public as well? Because that's a pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Yeah. So Sarah just put this together yesterday. And we updated the agenda packet maybe half an hour ago, and this was included in it. But we could certainly put this over onto the ARPA website.
Amanda, would this be uploaded, since they sent up a revised agenda packet?
It should be, but I will check right now.
And it really, we just wanted to give a snapshot for the committee because we're going to wait to really talk in any detail about these applications until August 3rd, when the deadline is.
Once that deadline passes, yes.
Yeah, so it's good. I mean, I've personally gotten calls from people that, saw the application announced on a news outlet or other places. So I think Don's outreach was pretty effective.
Great. It's pretty interesting that a majority of the applications are for less than $50,000.
Yeah, and we have also contacted via email all the people that had submitted project ideas through the solicitation form. So anyone that submitted during the original round of just more open-ended project ideas, they have been contacted again.
So everything that's in this agenda is posted to the website right now.
Great. Thank you, Amanda.
And then just as a nuts and bolts thing, Supervisor Seaver indicated that we should probably put a PDF version of the application online. So we're going to put a version of that, a non-interactive version on the website, and then probably just a note of instruction to people that don't have access to a computer that they could come by our office and pick it up and drop it off. So
Okay.
that's
People-
just general accessibility.
Okay. Would prefer people to send it online. It's still gonna say that on the website?
Yeah, absolutely. But just in the interest of any residents that don't have the ability or means to submit it via online, we want to provide options to them.
That's a legal requirement as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the application process update. And it does tie into number
2,
2.
go right ahead.
All right, so number 2, this was brought up at the last meeting, is basically with any grant application process, you should have an objective evaluation criteria so that as a committee, we're organized in how we approach making decisions about which ones to grant funding to, and for the applicants, knowing how to answer certain questions and on what basis they'll be evaluated. So we drafted this on the second page of the agenda, evaluation criteria. You'll see that this is called V2, version 2. I did have an opportunity to update it this afternoon after some committee comments. So, this here, it breaks it into 6 different categories. Each category has a set number of points. And so in this way, we can go through, assign points out of a possible 100. So this has been modified slightly from the version that was submitted last week. Did anyone have an opportunity to look at that? I know that it was probably a Friday on a beautiful summer afternoon. So I don't know if this is on everyone's priority list, but we do have the version 2 up. It's in front of you now, and it's also posted online. We think it's really important to have this ironed out in advance of a lot more people submitting the applications. We also intend on reaching out to everyone who has already submitted an application, the 12 applicants, probably more since yesterday when that sheet was put together, so that we can let them resubmit based on the fact that we have evaluation criteria posted for them at no penalty for them to resubmit, just in the interest of fairness. So did I don't know to what degree we want to get through this today, but I do think that we should, as a committee, reach consensus on this in advance of having too many more applications come in.
Yeah, especially if we're gonna let people resubmit based on what we're looking at here and deciding on later. Yep,
Correct.
Treasurer Swan.
Believe it or not, I did get a chance to look at this just after I got it to my office this afternoon. Whatever we need to do, I think it's excellent, and I'd be prepared at this point to move it as being accepted, whatever, if that takes a motion or.
I'll take
Whatever.
a motion for that. Do I have a second?
What's the second?
Okay, let's just go through it though before we give it a final blessing. We'll make sure everyone's looked at it, because what this means is we're gonna have to go through and score them later, us as a committee. And make sure we
Correct.
all understand. Okay, so a project evaluation. I'm not gonna read all the words there, but that seems good. Is that the most?
Yeah.
That's more about the applicant itself, the goals of the project.
Yeah, and that has the largest share of potential points.
Okay,
And we figured the first two were like the meat and potatoes of the whole review. And that's, if you look, most of the points are right there in the beginning, those two items.
35 and 25 points. Yeah, okay. So the second one, community need for the project and clearly describes current status.
One clarification here, I missed one edit on item B, demonstration of need, the third bullet. That's redundant with one of the bullets in item F.
Yeah.
So the conversation there is to remove that third bullet from criteria B
Okay,
from that section. And that is going to go down to F, funding prioritization, which is a yes, no question.
I think that's fine because we said we didn't want to deny or, include or disclude anyone just because they had or hadn't gotten
Correct.
funds, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So is everyone okay with deleting it from B? Yes, okay. Supervisor Seaver?
I know you'll all be very grateful that Ethan took the time to reach out to me earlier so that I can provide some detailed input. So,
Yes.
You can all thank Ethan for that.
Put this on quick, didn't he?
It was a productive conversation.
I'm sure it was. Supervisor Seaver has lots of useful feedback. So you've already seen this, Supervisor Seaver? Does it reflect your comments? Okay. And then C, community support and partnerships. I think that's great. If they have other people they're working with, financial support, matches. I mean, we didn't require matches, so 10 points is fine. Okay, project budget. Obviously, we need to have the budget completed, and that's where this other thing comes into play.
Correct. And we can
Okay.
talk about that in a second.
Okay, that's fine. Details, long-term stability. Okay, fine. Beyond ARPA funding. Good, okay. And then this question at the end under F1, that's just a question for the committee. We
Yep,
would mark
yeah.
it yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because, in the event that we have, by August 3rd, it's like, let's say we have $18 million in funding requests. This will be, we can use this potentially as a way to,
yeah, because we're already at $1 million requested. Okay.
Right.
All right. Anyone else have any changes before we take a vote on this form? Yes,
I'm
Mr.
not a
Elmer.
member of the committee, but I had a procedural question of what does it mean on the point scoring? And is the committee setting some plan to provide higher awards or percentage awards to those entities that score high as compared to low? Or you're just going through the process of awarding points? I guess, how does the points equate to approving and then funding the individual applications? That's just the open question I have.
I think it'll help us differentiate if we have pretty similar projects. We can say if there's a project that earns a lot of points and is a priority, then we're going to fund that one fully, for instance. Kind of like what we tried to do with with occupancy last year, where we set up a really tight scoring sheet where you could say, all right, this scored so many points, and so they are eligible to receive a certain amount of funding, but I don't know if we want to be that tight with.
Well, I guess my
Criteria.
only, and again, just from observation purposes only, I can imagine that the committee goes through the process, you figure out the awards, everybody scores it. And then you basically, I mean, one process would be that based on standard deviations, there's 25% that are at the top of the scoring that get fully funded. There's 25% that aren't and get some level of funding. Or if it's just, it's a not, or in the alternative, it's a non-binding worksheet that's just being used as a guide to aid the committee going forward. I'm looking to clarify.
I think I see what you're saying. Yeah, because we couldn't possibly, let's just say we got 1,000 projects in that all got 99 points.
Which is, statistically possible, but I would think logically improbable.
Right.
But-
Because I know some of these applications might be directed towards the not-for-profit and business relief portion that we had discussed for approximately $1 million, but some of the other projects that we get in might fall into a different category.
Which we might prioritize more over others, but I see this more as a worksheet to help us. Supervisor Sieber.
I would agree with your second proposal, County Attorney Elman. I would rather use this as a guide. I think with occupancy tax, what we learned was that when we did do the percentages, and I've been guilty of this, and it's too bad Dennis walked out, every scoring time, I'd say, well, they meet the max, and then we run out of money. And so everybody meets the max, but we don't have the money to give them, so we don't go by the scoring sheet anyway. So I think the idea here is that we're going to follow our own rules and give this scoring criteria out to the applicants so they know how their application could be the strongest possible application when they put it in. But maybe a disclaimer on that would be really helpful to the applicant, saying this is used as a general guide. It does not guarantee funding based on the score, but rather as a useful tool in the process of the evaluations. Some type of disclaimer
Thank you
that lets
for-
them know that.
Thank you for letting me address that one question.
That's a good point. And I also think that having the criteria there, and I had discussed this with Ethan, that we had a lot of people with other grants or other opportunities who would say, how are they going to be graded in essence? How are they going to be, that's the teacher and me coming about, but how are they going to know that they have a strong application? And it will help the committee in saying, well, they had 100 on this or 95 on that, and it's a strong app. But Dennis, what I was saying is with OCTAX, we have many times done like, okay, if they get max score, they get 100% of funding, as you know, and then we run out of money. So I'm more inclined just to use the scoring sheet as a guide, but that recognizing all committee members will need to participate in filling this out for it to work,
Right.
Yeah.
not like, not fill it out.
Got it.
So far, we have 12 applications. I think it's doable for the committee to go through 12. If we get another, couple dozen, we can do this. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 criteria and then 2 yes or no questions. We can do this. All right, I'm going to call the question on approving the criteria for the applications. All those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Approved. I mean, just, I'm voting no.
Wishful thinking.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Before we move on, speaking of dollars, I know Supervisor Sieber that you had a question about the public availability of information on funds that we have already spent.
I do. May I just
Yes.
ask for the consensus of the committee? We have had some public that have weighed in asking about, what projects have you already funded with ARPA? And I think because it is public money, there should be a successful application or funded project list, just like we have with other things in the county. It also gives people an idea of what other types of things have been approved, and it is going to be a great success story at the very end when you take a look at how these programs have really implemented and impacted in our communities. So, it's tax
I think
dollars.
That's a great, we have a website, warrencountiny.gov/ARPA.
Mhm.
And on that, it does sort of in the narrative describe all the projects, but if the planning department can do something cool like this.
When it comes to the planning department, this is primarily Sarah Frankenfeld who will be doing this, and she can certainly put together an awesome infographic for it. And that's a good idea for transparency's sake, because something like this communicates a lot more to people
Mhm.
than a bunch of text. But I would not even try to venture a guess on her availability. She's always prompt with everything, but I'm not going to commit to her to doing
Yeah,
this tomorrow.
yeah. Maybe even for just short-term goal, trying to get the list up in a bulleted fashion rather than, you have to kind of dig through the website with the updates over time as to where we've spent the money. Yes, Mike.
Well, this brings up a question because there's been a lot of money has been appropriated, but not a lot of it has been spent. So do you want to differentiate or do you want to just what was appropriated?
May I'm just
Yeah.
asking for what we've approved as a board.
Okay. all right.
Because I think we've got this misinformation out here in our heads, like, oh, well, we appropriated this chunk of money over here at $1 million, but that's not really what we appropriated. We said,
Right.
this is a good starting point. We may have to move it and change it and be flexible.
I want to clarify, when you say appropriate, I thought you meant through the Board of Supervisors, it's passed.
Yeah,
It's been passed.
Yeah.
You're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
but there's what has actually been spent and what has been approved to be spent. And
I understand.
And I don't have a problem with either way. I just want to make sure that that's what you want, is what was approved to be
Yeah,
spent.
yeah. What was
Okay.
approved? Because I know that it's still taking some time. Maybe, Mr. Alman, you could give us an update on where we are with like distributing the funds that we have approved.
My hope is all three contracts for the three awards are at least prepared to be signed this week.
Which three are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network,
Okay,
the Adirondack Sports Complex, and then the $1 million that went for behavioral.
to Community
No.
Services Board.
Correct.
Okay, what about the library? Did that money, the $30,000 for computers, checking out computers?
I have to check into that and whether or not that fell.
I think that Liza may
I
have
think that went,
helped facilitate that.
yeah, I don't know that there was a separate contract that was required for that as it was approved by the board. The only
Board-
three that I'm aware of, the three that I just mentioned.
Okay,
And then anyone's going forward from this process that the Board of Supervisors approves, they'll all have contracts. I have an idea on the answer to your question. I just don't, until I can check it, I don't want to misspeak.
okay.
But I'll
Wayne?
follow up with you directly on that library.
Thank you.
Yeah, my supposition on this is that if it's a county department, it's not a contract. I mean, it's
Okay.
just coming back to the county for management by whatever department, whether it be IT buying the computers or emergency services doing stuff or, whatever.
I forgot that we did, it was an award to Warren County Employment and Training.
Yes.
It didn't go directly to the library.
Thank you, Wayne, for speaking because I didn't want to misspeak until I double checked that. But
Okay, all right, so we're good there. Super-
But that being said, I mean, I really hope in the transparency to our taxpayers, whether it was just an offset to the county government or if it was a new project, we should report it. It was approved by the board with ARPA dollars.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's something that I'm sure Amanda or someone in your office could help us with, just on what's been approved through resolution that comes out of the ARPA fund. And then that way they know, okay, well, Countryside received X number, it would be easy enough to just do a one-word description or a two-word description on what it was for. Workforce, computers for the library, those things that even are basic county functions. I think it's important for the community to know how we're utilizing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just a list of projects and not
Yeah.
have clues.
Yep, that's
You
fine.
really got to
Yep.
give them some kind of description. of what
Right.
they're doing.
I just wanted to make sure that we got the right information out there.
Thank you.
Good. Now, since the county attorney mentioned the Community Services Board, it seems like there may be some confusion about how those projects are getting awarded. Can we have a discussion about that? Even though it's not on the agenda. My understanding was that we were giving the million to Mr. York to distribute through their existing partners. That they would evaluate the needs through the Community Services Board. But it
Yeah,
sounds like
bas-
that is not the case if we are going to be scoring mental health applications.
I don't think that was the intent of the application that we have
better not
been reviewing. Well, I think the whole idea of having the community services board was that these guys are topic experts and would have a better idea of how to allocate money for vulnerable populations, mental health services, all those sort of different things. And we wouldn't, as a committee, be evaluating each one of those individual projects that came through the community services board.
Okay.
That was
we're
going to be
not-
the vehicle by which they best understood how to allocate that pot of money. And then we would approve that spending plan that they had developed.
Once they develop it, okay,
Right, based on their expertise versus.
okay,
That was my understanding.
okay, good. Wayne?
Yeah, emails with Rob, have anybody who checks the mental health box as a type of application is going to get forwarded to Community Services Board.
Okay,
All right, and so that begs the question because Rob is under the impression that whether or not they're a partner organization with them, they can enter into a new agreement. So are we limiting what
Oh,
Rob does? Because you mentioned to existing
Yeah.
partners.
yeah,
And I don't know how that resolution actually went, whether it was existing partners or for mental health.
Right.
So,
I'm very clear that it was not for existing partners, that it
Okay.
was for the ARPA categories of behavioral and mental health.
okay,
broadly, you're saying.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, my recollection of the conversation by this committee was that money could be supplemented or added to later on if there's a further need.
Okay.
Supervisor Seaver?
With all due respect, I have a different recollection. I recall that discussion being that we wanted to send the money over to Community Services Board because they had MOUs and they had agreements with people they were working with already. It would cut down on what the treasurer's office had to do, that they knew where the resources were. And I brought up the question, it concerns me if we miss people then that don't have relationships already with Community Services Board. And this group said, well, we're not going to exclude those same people from filling out an application on our ARPA website, but we would still continue to look at those so long as there wasn't an overlap for the same need or a duplication. So the idea being Community Services Board would be able to be that conduit the same way, say, Liza is with workforce, and they'd push it out. I was disappointed to see that they're soliciting applications and kind of going through the same process we are, when in fact, it doesn't make sense to me. Then they have to come back, they have to send them all up as new vendors. I thought the deal was they were going to manage the million with their community partners. And then for those that they didn't have a relationship with or didn't fall within it, they'd be applying through the general ARPA funds, recognizing that $1 million is barely going to touch the issues of mental health in our community.
Well, so what I hear you saying is that we're not trying to exclude people, but the money through Community Services Board should be with the existing partners.
Right.
Um,
That's how I understood
I
it.
guess,
That, again, just from the legal aspect, they're definitionally a subrecipient. Their requirement is to ensure that the people that they distribute money to are treated as recipients under ARPA and that the funds are used in the appropriate means and manner. There's no, I do not recall any restriction from the Board of Supervisors saying they could only distribute to entities they have existing relationships and memorandums of understanding with. My understanding is they're serving the same function as this committee serves, except they don't need to report back to this committee how they distribute the funds. They make those decisions on their own. And then they, for reporting purposes, have to have information flowing back through them to our planning department so that our planning department can file reports. I think we're kind of maybe saying the same things, maybe. with
well, you
little
just said, I
tweaks.
don't agree with what you just said about not us, not look, I mean, what Ethan said earlier is that we would see a spending plan. So we would know who they're giving the money to prior to them giving it to them.
And that may be true, but there's nothing that requires this committee to approve their work product of how they're distributing the money as a subrecipient. Unless it's the intention of this board to, I don't want to use a phrase that has a negative connotation, but if it's the intent of this board to approve what they approve after they've approved it, that's different than the way it's been set up for them to be a subrecipient. Just like the county is a subrecipient in theory, to the state as the money, I'm assuming, flowed from the state down through. To the degree that the county's using some of those funds, great. To the degree that we're distributing it to other entities, that's what the Community Service Board, I believe, is doing, and why they probably have an application process. It sounds like from the supervisor from Queensberry that's in place.
Larry, we're saying the same thing, but two different ways here. You're saying that the concern here was that we didn't have to go through a bunch of vendor setups, new vendor setups. That's not. Am I wrong, Wayne? When we first saw you go like this, am I wrong? We talked about the management and how much time it was going to take and the efforts from the treasurer's office, from the attorney, from planning. And we came to community services to say, let's try to streamline this a little bit. So it took a little bit of work off everybody else and they knew exactly what their clientele was. So they were going to go back to their partners and say, we have this million, how can we spend it? And instead what's occurring is they are going to go to the treasurer's office and have to have new vendors set up. I saw a proposal by where it was going through finance.
No,
So what am I wrong on, Ethan, with that discussion we had today? I'm pretty sure that's what I read.
No, the money's gonna flow to the Community Services Board for them to distribute. They're the one vendor.
they're the one vendor.
Okay.
That's it. Now, if they're a non-existing partner, somebody who, then the application is going to go to our stuff, but check the mental health block. And then that's automatically going to go to them to evaluate to see if it's worthy or if it's a duplicate of service or whatever.
Is that really what's happening, guys? That the applications for existing partners are going right to the Community Services Board? Now,
If they check the mental health box, they're going to Rob.
okay. If
And he
they're
may-
not an existing partner, they're still going to go to the Community Services Board.
Correct. He may send them back and say, this is a great application, but we can't fund it, or they don't want to be a partner. And we take their recommendation under consideration and say, do we want to fund it directly?
And the other thing is that it's a timing issue. We are going to hold our review until after the deadline. Whereas Community Services Board could start making their plan now, which is kind of what we were hoping, that it would get going a little bit faster.
Yeah, I think this addresses all of your concerns about no one's going to fall through the gaps under the system. So if it's not going to the Community Services Board, we're going to see it for sure.
We meaning ARPA.
Yeah, so if it's something that doesn't fit
Okay.
into their group, into their overall spending plan, we're not just going to forget about them completely. Is
Let me
that
ask-
my understanding? Is that correct?
This
Yeah.
email says it's going to finance. My question here
Who's
is,
going to finance?
is it coming back to ARPA? That it's the recommendation that was given to Rob York was that it was to then go to finance to be set up as a vendor if they don't already have them set up. I just want to make sure that the ones that they don't have set up, that they already have relationships with, that they're giving the money to, if it's new, and whatever application, that it comes back to ARPA for us to make that determination. I did not know that we were gonna say above and beyond this $1 million, all mental health ones go to community mental health. I don't agree with that. If it's within the $1 million and they're partners that they have, they should fund them. If
Yes.
not,
Yeah.
it comes back here.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear us say that.
Oh,
No.
I thought that's kind of what we were doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just make sure Rob knows.
Yeah, maybe we should have a check-in with Rob at some point at one of our next meetings, just to see where he's at.
There was a lengthy email chain that went back and forth with Rob, and I can't remember who else. I think maybe it was with, you were a part of that too,
I
or
don't remember seeing it, but
All
that
right.
doesn't mean I forget it.
where I was just trying to call it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was the nuts and bolts of, yeah, make it work.
And, but basically, my point, and I think Larry was part of this email chain, that it was going to be, I said, okay, anyone that is part of your consortium, basically, you have an existing relationship, you're gonna review those. And his point was, we should send them all, because he could add another entity to the board. I mean, just because he doesn't have a contractual relationship with someone, an entity right now, doesn't mean he can't add them into their organization.
Okay.
And that if they don't assist those entities that aren't, for some way, shape or form, then they're going to come back to us for consideration. But if it's a new entity that they have not dealt with, he can incorporate them into their work program. They have an MOU process, and it would be just adding them into their organization.
Do you know what his time frame is for this?
I can't recollect what that is. I know he wanted to use our application. We were looking at taking the application that's online and modifying it for use by Community Services Board. And he came back and said, there's no need. So we'll just use your application.
Okay,
So he may be pointing people to that, but I don't believe he has a separate application process. I may be wrong.
I'm just worried that if I have no problem with Rob York seeing those and potentially wrapping them into his. But my concern is that if it doesn't meet the cut for him for whatever reason, then it comes back to us, but we've already decided we are spending, X dollars and then we have no more dollars to spend on mental health.
In all honesty,
Yeah.
I don't see us allocating all these funds, for
A million?
For a little bit. Well, the million, but we always said we could add more. I mean, so if it's a viable project, we put $1 million in the Community Services Board. If someone else comes in beyond that, we're not going to take, at least I assume, we're not taking money away from Community Services Board to
No,
fund someone else.
no,
So,
we're not doing that. No.
I don't quite follow where the concern is, because it's not part of that million. So. But Rob,
I think we have coverage.
Rob may come back and say, these are great. I'd like to work with them. Can you add 250,000? That's a consideration that this committee would then have to entertain,
Okay,
or we fund them directly, or we don't fund them. I mean, those are the,
Yeah, I think the point is that we just don't want anyone fall into the cracks.
right,
right.
right.
And we want to lean on Rob's expertise in
Right.
this subject matter. And I think we're doing
And
both
get
of those
him
things.
to speed up his time.
Should we invite him to our next committee meeting just for a 5-minute update on where they're at? Would that
Yeah,
make-
that'd be great.
Would that make the committee more comfortable?
Dennis,
Just
that
for
fine
5
with
minutes,
you?
zoom in for 5 minutes. It wouldn't hurt, right?
all right, good. All right, anything further? Dennis and my plan was to leave the pending items on for today. Just leave them pending for now. I'm adding new member to board, or sorry, committee. And also we'll add, invite Rob York to next meeting.
Like,
Oh, I'm sorry, the budget thing? Budget
yeah,
thing?
this was a
Yep.
draft thing that Wayne and I put together based on some Department of State reporting. We realized that in the application, we had some very simple budget questions. Now, as we get closer to trying to release funds to different groups, it's like, let's have a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of what people are proposing to spend money on. So on it's the third item in the budget or the agenda packet. Behind the draft criteria, you'll see the draft ARPA fund project budget summary and detail. This is, again, in draft format, but the intent is there's a budget summary table on the top of the page, and then budget detail: A, salaries and wages; B, travel; C, supplies and materials; D, equipment; E, contractual services; and F, other. We were thinking of calling F, other, more explicitly calling that out as maybe in parentheses, in kind, or matching services. This is more of a nuts and bolts thing. I don't think it needs too much committee discussion, aside from the fact that we want to collect more detailed budget information from applicants.
This kind of identifies the deliverables that they, if this is how they're going to spend the money. And if all of a sudden they say they're going to do $100,000 contract with somebody, but yet they do a $10,000 contract and it ends up being all in staff time on their part, they haven't quite fulfilled the terms of their agreement. And so this is a way to track that and say, this is where we expect the expenses to be.
Okay, are we putting this on the ARPA page for people?
We can either have it as an addendum to the application, or it could be as an intake form. You know, I'm thinking, for example, Southern Adirondack Childcare Network, or even like Greater Glens Falls Transit. You know, we've already earmarked money for Greater Glens Falls Transit's J1 worker program, you know, their bus passes. Maybe some kind of a breakdown of where that money's going in terms of like, hey, this is for printing stuff, this is for distribution. Just some kind of an idea of where the money's going.
Okay. So this isn't for applicants. This is for people who already got.
Well, it actually, we might, depending on what the will of this group is, it might make sense to have an applicant fill this out. It's fairly simple. And if you look at the evaluation criteria number D, or sorry, E, project budget, worth 20
Why don't we
points.
just put it on the website as a sample if people want to use this for their budget, because we are going to be evaluating your budget.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is, on the existing application, we have a fairly simple, like total project cost, and then the amount of ARPA funding requested for it. I think by having a more detailed budget sheet, we would be able to go through criteria E a little bit better. It's also a useful exercise for the applicant, so they can really come up with a
Yeah.
project that's real.
Yeah.
But, you know, ideally, we would use the budget as a basis of which we could help evaluate applications.
I would request that it be part of the application, but that's just me.
Okay. If you have a feeling about it.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
It's pretty
Let's-
straightforward, so.
Yeah. Let's do that then.
Okay, and I can work out some of the nuts and bolts, so it makes sense for reporting requirements as well. But this draft is just a general demonstration of a very simple budget, but detailed enough to help us evaluate it.
Well, this
Okay.
will help track it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
That's-
And
Exactly.
we have to track this stuff because it all has to be reported. So we might as well get it up front. And if they want to amend it later, we can work on that.
Correct, yeah, we're not inflexible.
Speaking of amending, if we can, I don't like it. The travel is so far up at the top. It makes it like, I don't want to be funding people's travel places. Can we move that down to E?
Yeah, I mean, if everyone wants to submit just digital comments, it might be easier to do.
Okay.
Take them all at once, and then we can get this
Okay.
thing out and append it to the application.
So we'll.
And
send
again,
them-
we're gonna be reaching out to all previous applicants to make sure that they understand the criteria. And we can say, hey, you know, we can walk them through the budget sheet.
Okay. All right, so we'll send comments to you and Wayne electronically by end of,
I mean, as soon as we can, I mean, ideally, we'd get as much more of this updated information out to applicants for this process.
Yeah.
And hit that August 3rd deadline faster, right?
I'm happy to make a motion to include this as part of the application process, as long as it's contingent on whatever changes are made in the next 48 hours. I think the longer we wait to keep going back to people and saying, thanks for submitting, but now you got to redo it.
Yeah.
We're going to lose people, and it's already a tight turnaround time. So if you want to make this as a required form, they need to know about it now.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, me personally, I would not make it required, but if that's the will of this committee, then make it required. So you have apples to apples.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. So we'll get you any changes within the next 24 hours. And then you'll have 24 hours to turn it around.
Yeah, it should be, I wouldn't imagine the changes are too substantial. It's
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
And will you just, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Seaver.
Will you just document really well for the people that you're reaching back out to, both by email and phone, so that they understand there is I'd hate for someone to think they've already applied and maybe they don't check their email often or aren't good with phone calls, whatever the case might be. But I think we need to make sure, in interest of fairness to everyone who's applied already, that this is,
Yeah. and
we've
we
got a
can-
really
we
clear
can
documentation.
Have a log of all that context, and we
Thanks.
can recirculate that back to the committee.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, so the last discussion item, I know we won't be able to vote on today, but perhaps we can have an overview of what you provided to us, Treasurer Swan.
Well, it's pretty simple. What we did is we took a flat dollar amount that we felt was reasonable to give to employees. What I did was I gave you the last page of the entire run. just because it was a lot of pages for the total, which would be $1,665,000. That's a $5,000 cash payment. Now, we prorated it based on if you were here all the time. And if you look on that top part of that page, you'll see 98% of the time, one person was there, $4,800 and $4,876 rather than the full 5,000. Because there's a lot of people that only work 1 or 2 days a week. We just felt, all right, let's prorate it and see where we're at. That we can change the $5,000. That works out to about $7.62 an hour more for the average person. I mean, other than that, I don't know what more I can tell you. We can change that 5,000 to 10,000 or 1,000.
Well, and you know, we had a discussion about this at one point. I thought, Mike, about how it was tough for people because some department heads were saying, go home and do your work from home. And others weren't, or it just couldn't work that way. And so we don't necessarily want to divide people by how much time they were in the office.
Well, what we did was we went under what was listed as departments that were essential and workers that were classified as essential. And then how much time they actually spent here. That's how we broke it down.
But just looking at this, only the one bit of the sheet, I mean, it looks like most people are around, I would say 4,500 to 5,000.
Yeah.
What if we just made it a nice round 4,500 for everyone?
That's fine. I mean, this was just set up as an example, okay? And I couldn't really say that it would be a flat cost because the committee didn't give me a criteria as exactly how much they wanted to tag. So we went with 5,000. And like I said, we can go to 4,500, we can go to 4, whatever the committee wants to recommend to the board to do.
And I know one of the things that is kind of coming out of the pandemic, although we're still dealing with it, the whole virus being around. But one of the things is to use this ARPA money to look forward, to pay people for forward work, because I know the county attorney will want me to say that that's what we're doing this for, and make it a payment in the future of a flat amount. Does anyone have any further? Yes.
The only other thing I would like to
Wayne,
say
you
is
can't
that,
say anything.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I had 3 out of the 13 people that I have employed that were not very happy with me that I told them they had to come to work because they were very concerned about their health and what it was going to be doing to them to be in an enclosed environment with other people. And basically I said, well, you have to come to work. You are classified as essential and we need to keep the county going. And the only way we tried working at home and it did not work. We could not make everything work, especially payroll and paying the bills. And we felt that those were 2 things, especially payroll, that absolutely needed to get done.
Right. And I know that so many people worked extremely hard during the COVID, during the pandemic, under risky situations. And that, think about people who were trying to go do home checks.
Well, how about our corrections officers in the jail?
Yes,
I
right.
mean,
Good point. Yeah.
Big time there. And they had a big problem with quarantines.
And
because-
road patrol was constantly
Well,
checking on people
right.
with COVID and.
So, I
yeah.
mean, I guess it's at the will of the committee, whatever you want to do, I'll support.
Well, we certainly have to be mindful too of the employees who came to this board meeting the other day and said they are, there was a woman, at least one, who said she's leaving because
It's a totally different thing.
the conditions are
Yeah, but that's
difficult.
completely different than what this is, I think. I kind of agree.
Explain to me exactly what this is. You got 380 people there.
That was what we classified as essential.
And you have records from.
Oh, yeah, we have the absolute records for everything, because when this all started and everything was shut down, every department had to file with the county administrator what they felt was essential and non-essential, and we had to fill out quite a bit of paperwork to get all of that done. So
So is this countywide, Mike?
this county what?
Countywide?
That wouldn't,
Yes.
I mean, but we have 800 Frank, I'm looking at you. How many employees do we have? 800 and some?
About 750.
So half-
Seven.
half of them are here.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do it, I do what Mike has. He's substantiated, he put a lot of work into it. I just go with that.
Well, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I just, this is, I
well
feel
aware of that.
personally, I mean, I originally lobbied for additional vacation time for people. And I think you remember that.
Yes, yes.
And that didn't go very far. I felt that there needed to be some sort of recognition for the people that put their health online to come to work every day because they absolutely were told they had to. I mean, and a lot of people sat home on their couch doing nothing. Some people sat home and worked at home. But
Do you have a sheet that shows non-essential who were working in the office?
yes, but that's the second page. If you look there, it says non-essentials, 171, that would be $428,000. However, those non-essentials are not eligible for ARPA reimbursement.
You're saying they don't meet the criteria.
They
for-
don't meet the
This is for
criteria.
the premium pay category
Right.
only. And I'm saying, we have more broad options, I think, under ARPA than just the premium pay.
Oh, no, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't.
Okay,
But there were 171 employees that were not classified as essential that did work. And that's what that 400,000 would be
okay, on top of,
on
okay,
top of the 1.6 million. But we broke it out because if we wanted to use ARPA funds to pay the premium pay,
Right.
we could not pay those 171 employees.
okay. We do have other money in the county.
No, we can use our own money.
Right.
Absolutely. We could use our own money for all of this if we wanted and not have ARPA pay it. I mean, the other counties, Washington County, Saratoga County, they just took it out of their general fund. They didn't use ARPA funds.
Wayne, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I want to give you the opportunity.
The only thing I was going to say is, for a employee who remains nameless, who provided the ARPA or the COVID information for online and a lot of the web program, web access, and who worked about 80 hours a week from home. I don't know that this is a fair representation of that effort that was every day of the week having to provide data and information to public health, to the county administrator, to the webpage. I think there's more instances of that I don't know how you address those. So it's not me, but somebody
I know.
else.
We do have to be careful about how we spend the ARPA dollars. We may have more flexibility. We do have more flexibility with general fund dollars. Supervisor Seaver?
Yeah, and I think to that point, we do have to be careful because it's easy to say, with all due respect, Wayne, that you don't, maybe you aren't planning on recusing, but if you are, I think we need to be really careful about the dialogue that's going on here. Because my question to this committee, for those of you that are voting, is if you pass something like this, are you then going to be opposed in looking at how are we addressing other incentive or retention or other issues that would in fact compensate and for people that may not have been qualified under this, where they might actually see two different types of payouts or two different types of incentive awards. And, I would not say it's totally different than the meeting the other night. I had one employee hand to me a document. New York State budget includes bonuses for frontline healthcare workers. And New York State, again, I've spoken with our county attorney about this. Many other counties, including New York State as a whole, but other counties have all found a way to address the gift clause or the gift issue. In retroactively reimbursing people or providing some type of premium pay. And I know that's been a concern that keeps getting brought up, like, well, you can't gift someone something. But I would say that we need to do more digging. We need to continue to find a way to adequately compensate and incentivize to our employees that are here. I mean, I'm looking at this printout of how New York was able to determine if you made under 125 grand, which let's face it, in our county, the majority of our people are, if they work 6 straight months for one employer during that vesting period, and then identifying what that vesting period time is, how many hours a week, who's eligible for what. I spoke with another county today in Wayne County who told me they added $100 bonus to every full-time employee, and part-time had $50 in their paycheck, every paycheck until the end of the year. We spoke with another county out in Ontario where they're doing a very aggressive retention plan of $7,000 for employees in 2022, moving into 2023 and 2024. I think there's a lot of different plans that are out there, but just to say, well, the surrounding counties around us didn't use ARPA, they use general, you know, whatever it is, we need more digging. We need some help with this, and we need a plan that can come in front of us that will pass. And I'm happy to, if you all are telling me, hey, listen, we're going to be behind other ways to look at this, but I'm afraid if we pass one thing, it's one and done, and we'll never be talking about it again.
Well, can I,
Yeah.
well, first of all, I don't want a decision made here because we don't have a full committee.
But we can't, we
No,
don't
we
even
can't
have
vote
enough.
today.
So,
Yeah.
so this is just,
discuss.
I was asked to get this ball started.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here it
do
is. Let's run with it and see
Right.
where it goes.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Do we want to try to put together a proposal? Like, Mike, are all these people full timers?
No, there's full and part-time. We did call out, there are some people that are no longer employed with the county. We
they're
have a
not-
separate list on those if we want to do something with them, but it's not included in this list.
Okay.
What about per diems or contractors?
No.
And again, if we go back to how we did the education reimbursement plan, I like the idea of if you're full-time, it's X. If you're part-time, it's X. If you're a contractor, if you're whatever, you work during this time, or we want you to stay, and we're looking at incentivizing that, you know.
This was just strictly employees, part-time and full-time employees. So,
What about less than part-time?
Yes,
Okay.
You
Yeah.
can't ignore the non-essential people either, because they didn't ask to go home, they were sent home.
Yeah.
I know, because I was here.
I think that maybe if we start working on a package that includes 2 different categories, like under the essential, and maybe we play them with ARPA. And then we put together a full proposal that includes using general fund to pay these other categories of employees that maybe don't quite meet the ARPA criteria.
the only thing I would say is that, CSEA came in and asked for a lot of money. Okay, so, and I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying, let's be careful. We've already allocated, we meaning the board has already allocated about $3.5 million out of our general fund for this year on various things. So, that's going to cut how much we get on sales tax at the end of the year. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying, and Frank, if I'm speaking out of turn, you can tell me, but I think we just got to be careful with how.
You could only spend it once.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're talking.
Dennis?
We're here for ARPA. I think we should concentrate on what Mike has here. It's eligible for ARPA funds. I have no intention of ignoring everybody else. Everybody stepped up late when they needed to, and I would fully support recognizing them, but this is just one step.
Well, we can, as a committee, correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, pass a resolution asking the Board of Supervisors to do something, even though it's not ARPA money.
Well, I think we should do that anyway, whether this committee does that or not.
Okay, but all right. I don't see that coming through any other committee right now, Dennis.
Is that your motion?
Did we ask no, we can't, I don't want to make that motion. I think we need to flush it out better.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
This has to be, I figured this was just the first round to open the ball.
Yeah.
Open the door.
I put together a proposal just of flat dollars amounts for full-time, like we did with that education plan, full-time, part-time, less than part-time. And I was wavering back and forth about whether or not we do something for per diem. Many of those people are, like, I'm thinking probably public health nurses are per diem, but they're with us. They've been with us. They serve our residents. They know our people. I mean, they're kind of like employees.
Oh, I'm not saying they should be excluded.
Okay.
When we ran this was strictly full part-time and less than part-time employees. We did not include per diems or anything else because I mean,
The flip side of it,
I was trying to get a base of where we are.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how far out we wanted to go, so.
okay,
I will just ask that in these discussions, unless you guys disagree, I think we absolutely have to exclude elected. I would be very uncomfortable moving forward with any plan that includes elected officials.
no electeds.
Oh, no elected,
Sorry,
yeah. I mean, they're not in here.
Okay.
The board, I'm not in here. The board is not in here.
We're under
Actually,
the,
Ryan is not in it.
Elected or appointed may be a better state
Yeah.
appointed or, yeah, I think we're gonna have a discussion about that.
Well, they were, I'm sorry, and I should have said that. They were already excluded, so.
Okay,
So maybe a list of exclusions, that would help me understand your chart a little bit better.
Yep.
Thanks.
now you've hurt my feelings.
all right.
Does the board want any legal guidance today before you dive deeper in efforts going forward? Or do you want me to hold those comments, which I've given to some individually, until a later date? I hate to see members of this committee spend valuable time and resources going forward with ARPA funds when ARPA and the New York State Constitution are fairly clear in what the requirements are.
Are you saying what Mike has proposed here is not qualified?
What I'm saying is my legal understanding of the New York Constitution is that there's a gift and clause provision which has consistently been interpreted by courts and agencies that you cannot pay an employee for work that's already been performed. While ARPA provides a category that's called premium pay, the federal government is allowed to create that category, to use that category and apply it to the several states. But in the state of New York, there is an equally competing provision under the Constitution that does not allow us to retroactively pay employees for work and services that have already been rendered. The similar situation was the one with public health earlier this year in 2022, when there was a question of paying two members of public health for a handful of weekends that they worked prior to the board resolution passing. And it was, my recollection is, it was understood that the comptroller's office and this county did not proceed with those payments because of the gift and loan clause that does not permit a public employer to pay a public employee for work that's already been performed. To the degree that we look forward from today, there's certainly means available. The county can pay its employees whatever the Board of Supervisors decide going forward. But there is a constitutional issue that needs to be respected and understood before we put a tremendous amount of time in looking at a plan to pay under premium pay for past work.
Well, Mr.
Additionally,
Allen,
right off the bat, one of the other categories that would need to be removed if the county went forward with premium pay is that any worker who is exempted under the Fair Labor Standards Act, the overtime provisions cannot qualify under premium pay per federal rule. So I think there's a number of hiccups. I think there can be some very creative ways to use ARPA funds to assist the county in making decisions to provide a payment that's a forward-looking payment for future services. But I'd be wrong to sit here and be silent and not state what I just stated, so that there's a perception we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and we put time, energy, and effort into it. And I'm a little hesitant because when we start comparing ourselves to what other counties are doing, there was a perception that two of our sister counties used ARPA funds that I've heard repeatedly from a number of different sources. And when I checked those two counties, they did not use ARPA funds to pay their employees. So I think there's also a difference between perception and reality as well. I'll do everything. I've spent a tremendous amount of time with this statute, with these regulations, trying to aid the process going forward. Because $12.6 million is a lot of money that can be audited by the federal government in the future. And I want to ensure, as the county attorney, that the county is properly applying the funds that they've received to the best of my ability.
Let me ask you this follow-up, and then I think if we want to have more legal clarification, we should go into executive session with our attorney. Wouldn't it be possible to pay our essential employees premium pay going forward? So long as
I
they.
believe that's something I would definitely expend time to look into going forward. But not when we are talking about or basing it on who was here when in the past.
Mhm. I mean, I always felt like that was a bit problematic looking back, and I said that earlier, like who was in the office, who wasn't. Let's not look back. Let's look at who's here now and going forward.
I think we can,
They're still essential
I think
employees.
the county can be, I apologize.
And can we give them this premium pay going forward?
I think we can be very creative as a county collectively on creating options and abilities to do something.
Yeah, I'd like to, I think the committee wants to do something. Well, those of us who are here, maybe we, and certainly we bring it back to another committee meeting. Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
I have a question for our county attorney. So whether it's perception or reality of what funds were used, isn't the issue still, as you've highlighted, the gift clause or the gift limitation? I mean, the gift issue doesn't go away depending on the type of funds that are used.
No, it doesn't at all. But what
Okay.
you've described, I believe, from Wayne County was they added into the payroll checks each week through the end of the year, which is future services going forward, $50 or $100.
That's future. I
That sounds
understand.
beautiful because they're not paying for services and work that's already been performed.
But going back to the point that you made earlier, whether it was ARPA or general fund, you said that you had heard from some people that it was ARPA money when in fact it was general. We knew as ARPA started being rolled out that Saratoga and Washington County had made a different decision very early on. So for me, I knew they hadn't used ARPA funds for that. But Wayne County actually told me it may have not been reported correctly in the paper, but that they use general fund. They're sending me the resolution and not ARPA dollars, but Ontario is using ARPA and a combination of some generals. So I think there's been different ways counties are doing it, but put all of that aside, if they're going back and paying for services that were already there, what you're saying is the problem here is that it's a gift.
I don't see any basis in any case law or agency decision at the state level that's looked at the issue that says you can do that.
So how can New York State, in this article that was given to me, be able to do bonuses for frontline healthcare workers if it's a New York State law? How does New York State violate their own law then?
I don't know the details of that law and I don't know,
I'm gonna just forward.
and I
you
don't
this.
want to say it's good to be king.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's good to be king.
Well, I'm just saying, us as elected, what we're getting from people is, well, how can New York do it if Warren County, New York can't do it? Or how can another county do it if Warren County, New York can't do it? And all I'm looking for is the information to be able to say, here, this is what we've been told. This is what our attorney has advised us, and here is that information. But I think we need to be prepared with that information as we continue to have these dialogues.
I am not in a position to critique what the other 63 counties have done with their ARPA funds. I can only weigh in and gauge what the proper use is for Warren County.
Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
One proper use is revenue recovery. So whatever amount that you would desire to end up pay could be considered revenue recovery. So technically it's ARPA dollars, but once it's revenue recovery, it's general fund dollars. So it's all how you want to look at it.
And that's been something that I've discussed as well with individual members of the committee.
You're talking about moving forward, not retroactively paying.
However,
I think we've beat this to death.
Yep, we beat this. Okay. We'll leave it on as a pending item. Anything further for today? Do we have any public comments? I don't see Don. Shocker.
Well, let me just, if I just could repeat back to the article that the supervisor from Queensbury provided me. It's not clear from this article that we're dealing with public employees. ARPA, we could use, this county can issue funds under ARPA for premium pay to any private employer that is deemed to have essential workers, and they can use that money to pay those private employees retroactively for services they performed. And I believe that's what this article from Rochester is referring to. It's hard to tell because there's no details in it, but I'm only talking about premium pay for public employees. It doesn't mean grocery store X can't receive money to provide premium pay retroactively for the people who worked at the cash register during the worst part of the pandemic. Those are what I call political decisions for the committee and the board of supervisors to make. But legally, ARPA clearly provides the ability to issue premium pay retroactively to privately employed employees.
And that doesn't violate the gift clause because the
They're not
gift
public
clause
employees.
only applies to public employees.
Correct.
Gotcha. But it seems so frustrating that our public employees who were essential frontline workers are getting blocked from this ARPA premium pay.
But then how come when we talked before about, and this is clear as mud to me, but we've been told by previous council that if we wanted to decrease a fee at the Charlie Wood Center for enough, that it's considered a gift and we can't do that. So I guess I'm,
That's right.
yeah, we were told we couldn't decrease the fees over there because it was considered a gift. So from whether or not are we a gift to
To
a
a
public or a
private.
not-for-profit or to a private? So I don't know. The whole
There may
thing-
be a different thing about that.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know if anyone is online. I'm sorry, I can't see the YouTube. We are on YouTube, correct?
You are, but Don is not on. so
Okay. Can you see the YouTube by any chance?
I cannot.
Dennis, motion to adjourn?
Yeah,
Do you want to set a
Thanks.
meeting date?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think we should wait a month.
Can I, yeah, I was just gonna say, can we have like a 3 or a 4 week reprieve between now and the next meeting? I don't know about planning, but my office is getting a little overwhelmed with trying to keep up with everything that's gone through. I don't know about a month, but at least maybe 3 weeks. And Wayne or Ethan, if I'm speaking out of turn for you guys, just,
We've got a hard deadline of July 29th for, I don't know, 4 or 5 grant applications that are due. That's going to take our priority. We have an obligation to get those out and do a good job on those. So we're under constraints there.
So we're the 28th of June.
Aren't you guys a little uncomfortable with going that far? I understand you have a priority and obligations, but these funds from the federal government's were priority and obligation to the counties, and our board decided to move forward in this way to expand an opportunity to our community to apply. If your deadline for applications coming in is August 1st, I mean, here today, we made some significant changes to that application process. Don't you think maybe the week of the 18th would be smart to collect and address any last minute issues that we need to before that?
Some updates. I mean, I don't think we have
Applications
to add
closed?
anything new.
The planning board had another employee, they probably could do
They
it.
do. They got one just for ARPA. They were awarded one that should start when? Can we get an
Starts
update?
Tuesday.
That would be an important update for this committee. ARPA funds have included some support to the planning department. Can we get an update on how that's going to work?
She
Well,
starts Tuesday, right?
she starts Tuesday. She's got the in process through the county. That takes a day or two. But then, yeah, I mean, she's already in the office, so it's just a matter of picking up this. She does other work part-time right now. And we stole her from Lake George and from the courts.
Good employee.
Yeah, she is. And so basically what her role is going to be is ensuring that we have everything that we need to do the reporting. All the performance criteria, which relates back to that budget sheet that, yeah, Liza, bought, I don't know, 15 computers. They were checked out so many times at the library. Those types of things that we show that this was the valid expense. That's going to be her role, is the minutia of the back end of this is collecting all that data.
So when's your deadline?
July 29th.
I do think we should meet before that, but I am anticipate, like, I can put the agenda together and we don't need a lot of support from you guys if we're just getting an update from Rob York, trying to add a new committee member. And I'd like to bring in a couple of people to talk about affordable housing. Yeah, come to committee. Just to give us a general sense of options out there before we start getting our applications. Or if somebody else has a better idea for guests to invite to talk to us, not have any real action items.
We have a whole list of pending items. You could have a person come in for every single one of those and talk about what the.
That's
Either
fine.
there.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It's just, if we're gonna be making more and more decisions, I know, like, planning is up against it, and my staff this is a tough time of year for my staff to make sure that we're getting all of this stuff logged in correctly and processed. So just looking for a little bit of breathing room on the behind the scenes work
Yeah.
that needs to get done.
What if we just have an update from Rob and maybe not affordable housing yet, but we'll do this RFP thing about the tourism, get an update on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I know the bids came back.
19th?
Yeah,
When is our board meeting in July, Amanda?
So the board meeting is the 15th. Our regular committee days will be the 18th, 19th, and 28th.
This is late in the afternoon, now that'll fit in, right?
Well, we have to have staff that are here at 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you don't meet till 3 and you're here till 5, it causes this issue for us to shuffle things around. We only have so
So you're
many.
telling us we should meet earlier? 1 o'clock?
there will probably still be committee meetings going on.
Yeah.
Let's move it to the-
26th.
Let's do the 20th. Wednesday?
That works for me. That works for me.
That's better,
Oh,
20th?
Yeah.
20th?
Better.
Okay. Still at 3?
Birthday.
Weren't there two people that couldn't come before 3 o'clock on the committee anyway? So.
I
I
can't
think Doug
remember.
and-
We did talk about moving times, but we've just left it at 3.
I think. Doug-
Well, we're good for 3 o'clock and.
Okay, 3 o'clock on the 20th.
So
the
long
20th.
as we're still able to Zoom, I'll be able to be here. Otherwise, I'll just be listening. When does that order expire, Larry?
July 15th,
14th?
14th or 15th.
So I'd still be able to call and then listen in. I just wouldn't be able to vote.
Assuming that it's not extended again.
Or the board doesn't pass a rule.
By the 20th.
What are we doing? Okay, anything else?
Adjourn?
Yep, we're adjourned. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.